When it comes to regional revitalization in Japan, a big thing of mine is whether or not it's going to be sustainable. They want people from the big city to come work in the countryside, help out with like social services, dumping money into the countryside to try to get something to stick. The biggest separation for these rural areas is being able to find information about where to go see. Communication issues, that's the first domino that falls. That solves a lot of other problems.
Hey there, and thank you for tuning in. We're excited to bring you another great conversation today. If you like the show and want to support us, please hit the subscribe button so we can keep bringing you great content week after week. And if you're feeling extra generous, give this video a like and share your thoughts and comments down below. Thank you so much. And now, let's get into it. Welcome to Unpacking Japan. I'm Toby, and today we welcome Justin all the way from Kitami, Hokkaido. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
You're a journalist and photographer based there, and you work a lot on rural revitalization. And I probably pronounced this wrong. I tried so many times to get this word right today, and here we are. Thank you for coming. Before we dive into your life in Hokkaido, can you tell me a little bit about what brought you to Japan?
So I was on the JET program. I was on the JET program in a place called Kushiro City, which is out on like the easternmost end of Hokkaido. Not quite like the last point, but it feels definitely like it's past the end of the earth. I was there for 5 years, and I decided I really liked living in East Hokkaido and wanted to continue living there. And I think you get sucked into living in Tokyo or Kyoto or Osaka, and I was trying to fight that as much as possible, and I got lucky and was able to find a job up there to keep the mission going. So,
did you come on the JET program to be in Hokkaido specifically, or was this by chance?
So on the JET program, you don't get to pick where you get to go.
But you can do some preferences, right?
Yes. So I lived in Tennessee before, and I grew up in a military family. So we moved around a bunch. I lived in California, lived in DC, lived in Tennessee. Basically, all those places are really hot and humid, and I was like, I do not want to live in that anymore. So my three preferences were Sapporo, Hokkaido, and then Tohoku. I was just get me out of the humidity and get me up north where there's snow. I've not seen that yet, and ever since seeing it, I'm not going back. So
your wish has been fulfilled.
It has most certainly.
Was this your first trip to Japan when you kind of ended up going to Hokkaido, or had you been here before that kind of got you interested into moving
Had
here?
never been to Japan before. Didn't speak anything. I didn't grow up like a lot of people who come to Japan. It was like, oh, I love anime, or I love manga and pop culture and whatnot. I want to live in Japan. That was never kind of on my mind. And just kind of the end of college, one of my advisors, great guy, he was a JET back in the day. He recommended it. He's like, I think you'll match really well with it. I think you can do things. You can figure out what you want to be. And I had somewhat of an inkling of who I wanted to become. And I thought that challenging myself to go somewhere, but going somewhere north, somewhere cold with no people, was the best challenge that I could give myself. So I'm really happy that it worked out.
Most people, before moving to Japan, have this image of very urban Japan, Tokyo and very large cities and all the neon signs and so on. When you were about to board your flight to Japan, you were going as far away as possible from that. What was your expectation moving there?
Yeah, so when you depart on the JET program, you all gather at the consulate like the consular's house the night before, and you have like this kind of going away dinner. And there's another person from my university who went on the JET program, and she's way down south and I'm way up north, and there's this big map of Japan and there's all these little flags of where everyone's going. I'm just all by myself up there, and I thought, okay, this is gonna be cool. It's gonna be hard, it's gonna be difficult. But getting onto that plane, I was like, all right, you gotta have no expectations. I think that if you build into your mind that Japan is like this or Japanese people are like this, you're really gonna disappoint yourself. So just coming in, tabula rasa, is that the expression? No image whatsoever, then yeah, you're really gonna enjoy it and find new experiences that matter.
When you got there, you arrive at Sapporo airport, I imagine. Does someone pick you up to help you go to Eastern Hokkaido, to wherever you were placed? Or was it like, okay, well, you have to crawl your way through the snow?
So we arrived at Shinchitose Airport, which is about an hour out of Sapporo. That's like the big airport up there. And our boss from the Board of Education from Kushiro picked us up. He was all tired. He was like wanting to go back. A great guy. But to give you an idea about the size of Hokkaido, going from Sapporo to Kushiro is like going from Osaka to Tokyo.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like almost the same kilometers. It's
so about 600-ish nearly, I think.
yeah,
kilometers?
probably a little bit on like the 550, maybe a little bit lower, but it takes 4.5 hours to get there by train.
So he did a round trip to kind of come pick you up.
I think he probably came the night before and then maybe went to a few of Sapporo's finest bars. But yeah, no.
Maybe that's why he was a bit grumpy there.
A little bit, maybe. And yeah, so we had to ride the train back and we didn't get back until, 8, 9 o'clock at night. And I remember the first thing when we arrived in Kushiro on the train, it's a blue collar town through and through, paper plant, fishing, shipping, lumber. It stunk really bad.
Really?
Yeah, but it's kind of a funny thing to be greeted by. It's like, okay, yeah, this is where I'm going to live now and I'm going to make the most of it and try to enjoy it for what it is and not try to expect it to be something that it isn't. And I think a lot of people kind of fall into that category when they move here. They think that, oh, it's going to be like this. It's not. It's going to be what it is.
Did you get any accommodation provided and were you set up with everything you needed at the beginning?
Yeah, so we had an apartment that was organized by our BOE. We also had a rental car that we were able to use whenever. We didn't have to use it just for work. And we were kind of given a week. It's like, you just settle in, learn how to drive a little bit, explore the area. Fortunately, I was really close to downtown. So I spent a lot of that week at different restaurants and whatnot and meeting people. And Kushiro is really interesting because it's kind of this island. When you get out in East Hokkaido, the farther you get from Sapporo, the less of humans there are, the less of the evidence of humans. It's just nature and trees and mountains and rivers. And then suddenly Kushiro pops up out of nowhere and it's just kind of right on the coast. So getting out to drive and explore different places and see scenes that I haven't seen before, those are really special memories for me.
Just before recording, we quickly talked about this show from Huckberry called Dirt, where they also do this tour of Hokkaido, and I think they stop there, right?
Yes.
Where they go to a local restaurant and cook with the family there.
Yep. It's local through and through, and on that show, I think they did a little bit of ice skating as well, and I used to play ice hockey there, and Kushiro is famous for this sport called Nagagutsu ice hockey. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Okay, so it's ice hockey, but you wear rubber rain boots.
That doesn't sound safe.
No, it's not, but it's fun. It's really, really fun. And so you're running around like a Looney Tunes character on the ice and slipping and falling and crashing into people. But yeah, that's kind of what, these smaller communities are like, is they just have these quirky little traditions and they don't look like Japan as we expect it, but it's important to the people there. And I'm really happy to have be able to see those places and think like, oh, like, hey, that's my student over there in this like YouTube video that's famous now. So
you mentioned that you were graduating from university and kind of not so sure about what you want to do, and your counselor advised you to go on a JET. And then you ended up staying for 5 years on that program. What was it that kind of got you to stay and kind of, I'm going to stay in this little very remote part of Japan and I'm just going to keep doing this and continue my life in this area?
Yeah, so I arrived in 2019, and there's this little event that happened soon after. So I could stay here longer, and I could continue to skill up in Japanese and meet people and have a work environment for me that was fulfilling. Or I could try to navigate what it's like when the world is literally on fire and go back home and find a job. And the first option sounded a lot better. So I stayed there. I had originally wanted to be a teacher in college. I thought maybe like you're still young, try to live somewhere else, try to see something else, meet people that you don't really know or understand and get to do so better. But East Hokkaido it's an easy place to live. It's crazy walking around here in Osaka and I see so many people with suits. It's like, you guys have an economy here, like people who have really good jobs and like are busy working. And then you get to like Kushiro or where I live now, Kitami. I read a Reddit comment one time and they compared downtown Kushiro to like The Walking Dead. And which like, that
not very
sucks.
Flattering.
Yeah, not very flattering, but that's what that place is like. And what we do as foreign residents or as travelers there, like they do have an impact on places that don't have that settled economy or are kind of in the woes of modernization. And yeah. So I'm just happy to have been out there and I haven't looked back since.
And obviously, you've got the winter you want. You came today wearing turtleneck and a jacket, and people outside here in Osaka wearing t-shirts.
Yeah, no, I got some funny looks walking here today, but this is good weather. You know, it's crazy. You guys have spring.
Hokkaido summer already.
We don't. It just goes winter, kind of not winter, summer. Kitami is where I live now is kind of both. It gets really hot in summer, but not humid, which is nice. But then it gets really cold in winter. It's next to Rikubetsu, which I believe is the coldest place in Japan. Okay. Yeah, minus 20 Celsius.
That's pretty cold, yeah.
A little bit colder with the wind, and yeah, it's known for ice. So yeah, it's fun. But I love winter. It's beautiful. Some people are like, I love summer and Okinawa weather and Fukuoka and whatnot. I don't know how. I'm just sweaty all the time, but you can kind of get warmer when it's cold. You can't get colder when it's warm, in my opinion. So, yeah.
You like that area. You are on the JET program, but you kind of have to start thinking about what are you going to do to stay. I believe you cannot renew indefinitely the JET program. There's like a limit.
Correct.
So were you figuring out your career path, so to say, path that you had in mind when you were in college? What made you decide to kind of move away from Kushiro to Kitami?
Yeah, so the JET program will last a maximum of 5 years. And then for some localities, they max it out at 3. There's a huge saying there. It's called ESID, or every situation is different. And for me, it was 5 years. And then it's like, you got to find a job or go back home. You'll get your flight paid for and whatnot, which is nice. But I knew at that point I had been here long enough. I spoke Japanese. I knew people. And I could not forget the nature that is out there. And I wanted to stay. So my last year, I very pleadingly asked my Board of Education if I could get what's called a Shikakugai Katsudo Menkyo, which allows you to work outside of your visa category. So as JET program participants, we're on the instructor visa. So we're specifically working for public, middle, high school, and elementary schools.
And you're not allowed to work outside the scope of what your visa allows?
Nope. And that's not like a Board of Education rule. That's like a national government. This is what your visa category allows you to. And I told them, I was like, hey, I have this opportunity to start writing with a newspaper. I would like to get paid for it. If I don't get paid for it, that's also okay. But that obviously brings up a tax issue. And at that point, I had met a nice guy who would be willing to do my taxes for me. So they're like, yeah, you've got a plan. You know, thank you for 5 years. We're really excited to see where you go. If this helps you get there, then by all means, you can do it. So really grateful for them.
How did that opportunity come about to start writing and journaling? Because now you are a journalist and you're writing for different publications on Japan.
Yeah, so that one is an interesting story. A lot of networking and meeting different people, and the chance finally came about to meet someone who worked at a newspaper. I'd always been interested. I love reading the news. I love watching the news. The news is great. It's my hobby. And I know too much about it, which is kind of sad in these days, but
overwhelming at times.
Yes, very much so. And yeah, I got introduced to someone who worked at a newspaper, and we had a conversation. He's like, hey, I think that you can do well in this. I think you have good ideas. You can report on a place that most people who come to Japan do not go to. And most people who live in Japan never see. So yeah, as long as I could tell the stories from out there, that's kind of how that story came about.
It really seemed like up until now, like you really love that area. And so one of the key topics you wanted to talk about today was kind of rural revitalization. I think I said it better than earlier.
Very good.
Which is what you do now primarily alongside with journalism. Can you tell me a little bit about what this is and how this all works? Japan is known for having a countryside that is kind of getting more and more empty, and people migrating to the cities despite multiple efforts from the government to get people to move out back to more rural areas. But there's one initiative that you're part of, I think, that you can tell us about. Yeah,
so I am part of a program that's called the Regional Revitalization Corps. In Japanese, that's the Chiiki Okoshi Kyorukutai. And that's a national program. And it started in like 2008, is primarily for Japanese residents, and then eventually they opened it up for foreigners. It's an interesting program, and it falls in the same category as JET, where it's wherever you go, it's different than the next town over. But the idea is that we're pulling people from big cities and populated areas to the rural areas, and then giving them some leash to try and start a project or help support a project that's ongoing. So
this is not necessarily about bringing in tourism, but rather make the locality attractive for people to move there.
Correct, yeah. So the Regional Revitalization Corps encompasses more than just tourism PR. There are people who do jobs that are related to farming. There's people who do jobs related to tourism PR, which is where I'm at. There's also people who promote local sports. I know a few people who do programs where they help out with like child education, different like social services. I think in our town as well, there's also a person who helps with like animal welfare. So hoping that, you know, dogs and cats are being taken care of and helping with like the animal control center and whatnot. So yeah, it's all industries. Each town kind of applies. They say, hey, we want to start this project. We apply for the grant from the federal government or the national government. And I'm an American, the national government, and then they get the money for the program, and you start a 3-year contract. And there's really 2 types of contracts, and I'm on the more rare side. So first, there's kind of like the office worker style, and then the freelance style. So office worker, your salary is a little bit lower, but you get bonuses. You work in the office with everyone else, and you help support their projects. I work on the freelancer contract, so my monthly salary is a little bit higher. I don't get bonuses. I work remote. I set my own schedule. I have to meet certain minimums per month, and I have to be showing progress towards an overall goal. For foreign participation in the program, people are like, that's a really nice idea, working remote in Japan, out in the countryside.
Yeah, it sounds very appealing.
That's nice, yeah. So it's an immigration program. They want people from the big city to come work in the countryside to then live there after the program. So
especially have kids, I imagine.
Yeah. So that 3-year program is a tryout for the future. This is to see if you can get something going and started and then be able to support yourself. A huge majority of the program, 99%, is Japanese nationals. And so they don't have visa issues. They don't have to worry about certain like loan requirements or all the difficulties that we have as foreign residents here. But yeah, they want you to stay after that program. And so people might not be willing to make that jump, but some people are. And I encourage them to check the program out.
I have many questions. I need to sort them out a little bit.
Okay.
But so it's a national program. Is it like the JET where there's like a place you apply and then they place you somewhere? Or do you choose where you want to go and what kind of job you want to do, like freelance or in the office?
So it all depends on where the like local like contracting organization, what they want. And there's a job board that you can look at. And each job board has different kinds of categories. Is it like more volunteer? Again, these are like marketed towards Japanese nationals or long-term Japanese residents who don't have visa issues. So there's different categories. You can look there, and then that job posting will say, we want this, you will work this, you will get this in that posting. So another one I was looking at was in an island that was part of the Tokyo prefecture. They wanted someone to work in like the tourism office there, help support the ferry that comes in and whatnot. That was only a 2-year-long contract, and they didn't let you do the third. With my situation, the city of Kitami was starting it as a new program for tourism. And so I had a little bit more leeway to be like, this is what I would like to receive. This is the working conditions I would like to have. I had a friend on the program who I met in Kushiro, and he had those conditions. So I was kind of able to get lucky and talk with him and then be able to negotiate a little bit different contract.
So there's a little bit of room for negotiation.
There can be, but if the program has already been established and the contracting organization said, we want this, they will have that, and you can't really negotiate after that.
So if I understand the program correctly, it's basically government-supported program to create a sort of job for someone to move to a rural community. And their job is then to bring in more people to move after them, so to say.
To bring in more people, at least in my mission, is we want more foreigners to come to Kitami City and to the Okhotsk region. We can talk about what that word means here in a second. But yeah, it's just kind of dumping money into the countryside to try to get something to stick, to try to kickstart the engine out there. Kushiro doesn't really have that long-term sustainable country or economy. It's a paper town. We live in the age of the iPhone. It's a fishing town, and they overfished. There's coal plant. We don't use as much coal as we used to. So all of these, rural areas are facing challenges. Kitami is a farming city. It's close to all of the big nature and all the massive national parks that East Hokkaido and Hokkaido has to offer. But it's kind of seen as a passing by, a way station going out to Shirotoko or to going to Okanmashu or even coming back to like Daisetsuzan. And so everyone's kind of trying to figure out what they're going to do in this big age of over tourism. And yeah, it's kind of a difficult problem, but it's fun and I enjoy it. I love the area and I want to support it and I want it to win.
You said you went down this path of more freelance approach,
Mm-hmm.
and you are in this kind of tourism-related PR section. But what exactly, once you're in this program, what exactly do you have to do? You mentioned you have monthly kind of goals to reach.
Mm-hmm.
How do they measure the success of
Mm-hmm.
this, and how do you approach your kind of freelance endeavor?
Yeah, so I won't talk specific numbers, but I have to get a minimum amount of posts on social media per month. There is no stipulation as to what length of those posts it has to be. Obviously, I want to do as much as I can. So being in a position where I work freelance, I am now able to have fukugyo or like side income, side hustles. And so with that, I try to challenge myself to write articles or for travel sites or for consulting work for travel companies to help create things in our region. And that's the big goal that I'm working on right now. And they look at it a month, they say, all right, you're now studying for your guiding license. When are you going to take your guiding license? And then when you get your guiding license, how are you going to market yourself to inbound tourists? Where are they going to, make reservations at? How are you going to get your name out there? What kind of tours are you going to offer? So it's kind of I have a job with many hats, and I have like the travel consultant, and I have the tour guide, and I have the journalism. But it all kind of stems from, I take pictures, I write articles, and that's kind of the engine of what I'm working on right now.
So basically, as long as you show you're producing work, putting it out there and promoting the area, they see you're making the progress. But it's still not very clear, like, okay, you have to do this or that. It's a little bit of everything.
Yeah, so it's negotiated in between me and the city hall about, all right, this is the direction I'm going to move in. So Kitami, for example, is a curling town.
Like the sports where you slide the thing on ice.
Yes,
and then you have to
which is not like what we think of like Japan.
No.
The really famous like women's Olympic curling team, that's where they're based out of. A couple of the men's teams are out there as well. So one thing that I'm working on right now is trying to get an event started to where if you come to Kitami, you can learn how to curl. And you can meet, some players who are pretty famous out there. So it's starting that. It's trying to connect the right people. I love being able to work remote. I work from a little co-working space in downtown Kitami, and I get to meet a lot of different people and try to put them together and say like, hey, I think we can try to do this, try to kickstart the tourism engine and whatnot. But you kind of meet the challenges as they come. And then when it comes to regional revitalization in Japan, a big thing of mine is whether or not it's going to be sustainable. So I'm here for 3 years. I intend on living in this area afterwards. But obviously with my visa, there's a chance I could have to go somewhere else. But is the work that I'm doing in this town, is it going to be able to stand on its own 2 legs after I'm gone? And that's what I hope to accomplish. Because you have like places that come in, towns that get really popular and none of that's sustainable. There's a really famous town in Hokkaido called Niseko. Everyone knows, and that's like a huge bubble. And snowboarding and skiing is great, but where that area is at, when the temperatures start rising eventually as they go along, that kind of famous Japanese powder snow isn't going to be as good. And then that multi-million, maybe billion-dollar economy of skiing out there is just going to kind of, waste away. And so I'm not going to start a big thing like that. I don't have the power to, but I would like to be able to start something that lasts a little bit longer than I do.
You mentioned tour guiding and getting a license. What is this like in Japan? We see many guides around the country, and more people are kind of advertising guide services. Is a license required? What can you do with or without? Do you know a little bit about this?
Yeah, it's a bit of the Wild West. So if you're kind of offering private guiding tours, then you're able to do that so long as your visa permits or your workplace permits as well. With Hokkaido, there's really big bears everywhere, and they're dangerous, and the nature is wild, and there's risks of accidents, and so insurance needs to get involved. So if you want to work with a local company, or you want to market your services out to an OTA, or an outbound or an inbound global company, you have to have these licenses. So one really big national park that's super famous is the Shiratoko National Park. And basically that is just a peninsula that is entirely covered in mountains and bears. And you can't guide in that area unless you have that proper license. So I wrote an article a few months ago about whether or not, backcountry skiing guides are going to be required to have licenses in the future. And that's a possibility. But right now, a lot of people don't use guides. I think for skiing in particular, it's like 60 to 80 or 60 to 70% of people don't use guides at all. They'll just go at it by themselves. Backcountry skiing is dangerous. There's avalanches, people die, people get injured. And the government is aware of that. And they kind of don't understand about how to go through the issue of getting people properly registered. Radios are a problem. There's always minutia details that are really impacting what the guide economy looks like. But when you travel to Japan, especially in a place like Hokkaido, where it's not as easy to travel as Tokyo or anywhere else, having a guide connects you to the community, but then it also makes that tourism economy just that much more sustainable, because it's often keeping that money local rather than a big hotel that is operated out of Osaka. Nope, no offense intended, but that money kind of gets sapped back out. So yeah, a lot of local guides, they're really eager to share about the small little minute details that you wouldn't see if you're out in the East. And yeah, you should support them.
So if I were to hire your services as a guide and go on a trip to Kitami next week, where would you take me?
So first and foremost, do you like yakiniku?
Yes.
Okay. So Kitami, much like the rest of East Hokkaido, is all about agriculture, farming, dairy, meat, whatnot. So Kitami is known as the northern yakiniku capital of Japan. So it has the highest GDP of yakiniku restaurants to citizens. So there's 70 or 80 right now. So I think it's 1 or 2 per 10 people. It's something like that. Yeah. So there's just a lot of different places. So first we'd probably sit down. We'd have some good yakiniku. A big thing that's popular out there is horomon.
I'm not too big of a fan of.
It's awful. Yeah. So some people don't like it. It's grown on me. It definitely has. But
for those that don't know, horomon is basically innards.
Yeah, it's the part of the animal that is never really used. And yeah, it's the scraps, but it tastes good. I like it. So probably go enjoy that. One of the things that Kitami is also really popular for are onions. And it produces the most onions in all of Japan in that area. So if you're eating an onion in Japan, the chances of it coming from Kitami are quite high. So please come and eat onions in Kitami. But yeah, there's, this history of agriculture and culture that is really deep in the area. One thing that is kind of unique is that we all look at Japan and we think that it's this kind of secluded, isolated culture that developed in its own bubble. But when you get to East Hokkaido and you get to places where I live, like Kitami or in Kushiro as well, you get to see how the story of humans connects through these places. So a word I brought up earlier was the Okhotsk. And the Okhotsk is the name of the sea that's north of Kitami.
That's the sea between basically Japan and Russia?
Correct, yeah. So that is named for the indigenous people that lived there. They were mariners, they were hunters, they gathered, they fished. So they lived all up and down that coast. And Hokkaido, when you compare Hokkaido to Japan, Hokkaido is not Japan.
You might get people angry saying this.
It is not. It's not. So let me explain. We look at Japan as this really long unified history that has aesthetics like samurai and ninjas and civil wars and whatnot. But when you look at Hokkaido, Hokkaido is so young compared to the rest of Japan. It only really entered it was the first colony in the 1860s when it got developed by the Japanese government. And that was kind of under pressure of Russia's expanding in Siberia, and so they're like, well, we want to make sure that this is ours. So yeah, Hokkaido's otherness goes back before it was Hokkaido. It was called Ezo, and Ezo comes from this word that means like land of the barbarians, is home to the Ainu, and then all the cultures preceding the Ainu. So the Okhotsk are one of those cultures. So they're most known by like their pottery and their animism. So this is gonna get really history dense. I'm gonna simplify this.
I'm listening.
I'm gonna simplify this as best I can. So you have the Ainu, and everyone knows, not everyone, but most people know about the Ainu and how they're kind of the northern indigenous peoples of Japan.
Now also portrayed a lot in the new Ghost of Yotei, I think, video game.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you can see them there.
Exactly.
Bringing a little bit of spotlight.
And there's that other anime,
Golden Kamui.
Golden Kamui, that they're also in. So there wasn't always Ainu. There was other indigenous groups before. So the two major ones that we have are the Satsumon and the Okhotsk. So there's kind of genetic comparisons that can be made between the Ainu directly to the Satsumon, but there's religious and cultural practices that can be connected to the Okhotsk. So the worshiping of bears, certain types of animism, we see that in different like burial grounds that are in the Kitami, like Abashiri and like Kushio regions. So you just have these kind of like pits that are excavated, and there's all of these bones, and then these bones tell a story. These bones are located next to pots, and these pots have different designs that date back thousands of years. You look at this one and the pattern's kind of cut this way, or you look at this one and the pattern's a little bit wavy. And those are how we get those different cultures. It says, oh, this culture kind of did it this way. We see these pots come around from this time. This culture made their tools this way, and it's expressed in, these kind of pottery. So it's like ancient human history. Lots of like obsidian tools, places like Engaru in the greater Okhotsk region. You find this kind of long legacy of like Arctic indigenous people that when you think of Japan as this isolated country, but then you look at this, you say, oh, the Ainu and their predecessors, the Okhotsk, Satsumon, and before, well, they look so reminiscent of the First Nations in Canada or different indigenous peoples in like Alaska. And so it kind of connects that human highway out of Africa and that storyline. So you say, oh, well, there's different influences that Japanese culture may not have been greatly impacted by. There was trade in between the Ainu and the Japanese. There was trade in between the Okhotsk and the Japanese at that time. There's cities out there that have really Japanese, or not really Ainu names. Places like Kushiro is kind of grafted in from the Ainu language. Places like Obihiro as well. But then you get out to the middle of nowhere and you'll find like lakes. I think there's one's called like Chimikepu, which that's an Ainu word that's maintained. Places like Sapporo. Sapporo is also a descendant of like an Ainu word. So you have this kind of otherness of Hokkaido that's really baked in, that when you spend time out there and you come down here, you're like, oh, these are kind of different. These are different countries in some sense. Maybe not legally, but aesthetically and historically they diverge.
So if we finish our big portion of yakiniku with the side of onions, and we want to go and see this history and see some of the Okhotsk heritage and the Ainu, what can we do in that area to actually interact and see how it is today? Okay.
So what season do you like?
Winter. Fall, I guess, as well.
Does your significant other appreciate that as much?
No.
Unfortunate. I love winter. So one thing that we could do after that is go to a place called Lake Saruma. Lake Saruma is one of the largest lakes in Japan, and it freezes over during the winter and has this incredible sunset. And it's like a lagoon. So it used to be part of the ocean, and then it's now still brackish, briny water, but it's now separate. And there's lots of like scallop farming and whatnot. But on the banks of it, in the woods, we can go out and we can go explore and look at what these like old pit dwellings and houses looked at this place called the Tokoro Forest of Remains. We can go across there. We can walk up to Ainu Chashi, which is the word for fort. And that's kind of where, this is a little dive into history. These forts got started because of all the trade with the Ainu and the Japanese. And so when you look at the number of these, they all increased around the same time. And that was because the Ainu were like, all right, we're going to move on from hunting and gathering. Our main economic drive is going to be trade with the Japanese. So we need to control certain natural resources like cranes, the big, beautiful tancho cranes, like JAL is their mascot. Those were a commodity, different types of fur, meats, and whatnot. So we can go explore all of that. And then we can go up into the mountains. And then one of the best things about East Hokkaido is just the horizons. Wherever you go, there's always a different horizon. It's grand, it's big. It varies by season. Sometimes it's foggy, and sometimes you just get these brilliant sunsets. You can see mountains far away, you can see mountains close, and it really puts you on this kind of small scale. And you're like, oh yeah, nature's bigger and better than all of us, and we should do our best to preserve it.
It's just a tiny piece walking around.
We don't mean much, but what we can do to impact the greater is quite a bit. So
for someone who loves the outdoors, it sounds like paradise.
Yeah, for
And,
certain.
you can probably do endless hikes and really enjoy the different seasons and the weather. Going back to the topic of revitalization, what do you think is needed for these efforts to be successful? Because for someone who's like, let's say, currently working here in Osaka, having a business job, what are they going to do when they move out to Kitami?
Yeah, what are you going to do when you come out and you fall in love with yakiniku and you move up to Kitami with me? That's a great question. And I wish that I had kind of like this magic solution that would fix all the problems. But I recognize that I don't. I'm just a kind of a small part of a bigger machine. One of the things I do think that is necessary across the board is communication abilities. So I don't say that as in everyone has to speak English, but everyone should feel confident enough to be able to solve problems regardless of what language you're speaking in. So whether or not that's through technology or whether it's through like actual me just being able to speak a different foreign language. The biggest separation for these rural areas is that making hotel reservations is more difficult. Making bus reservations is more difficult. Working with guides, maybe there's not a guide who speaks enough English that he feels comfortable in being able to provide a good product, he or she, or being able to find information about where to go see. Because when you come to Hokkaido, you're not coming to Hokkaido to see Japan. You're coming to Hokkaido to see Hokkaido. And that's pretty common around domestic tourism. So Japanese will go to Hokkaido to get away from Japan. They want to see the big skies. They want to see the big fields. They want to see the nature. They want to have the quiet.
Seafood.
And they want to eat the seafood, which Hokkaido has some of the best. I'll die on the hill. East Hokkaido has the best food in Japan. We can argue about that if you'd like, but people need to be encouraged that communication issues, that's not the barrier that you can't break, and we can all work together to try to figure that out. Because when you do that, that's the first domino that falls. That solves a lot of other problems. You have over tourism. Now you're able to control tourism a little bit more. You have pricing out of Japanese people in certain areas. So now you're able to engage people to create more globally minded businesses, or at least for like tourism entrepreneurs or ventures, they're able to kind of create something local that stays local, that supports local, rather than a big company coming in and creating this thing and then sucking up all of the income. So I'd say being able to teach people how to communicate, how to do it right, when not to, and just kind of being a little bit more open. That's something that is really, really important.
Have you seen some examples of successful efforts at revitalization initiatives that have been sustainable, that are still going on, and that are now kind of attracting more people to move there, both foreigners and Japanese alike?
Yeah. So there's a few. So I'll cite kind of two different areas, and then I'll cite an organization itself. The first area I would say would be like Minakami in Gunma Prefecture. That's a town that has a lot of adventure tourism, lots of canyons and rafting and hiking and snowboarding. It's all 4 seasons, very good. And there's a really good balance between like foreign participation in that, but then Japanese young people starting businesses out there. And seeing that dynamic, it's really inspiring for me, because when you get out to Kitami, it's like, who am I going to partner with? It's like onion farmers and, blue collar workers. And so not having that kind of same appeal that really brings people out, having tried to really grassroots that. I really take a lot of inspiration from that area. The second area I would say would be this area called Hidaka in eastern Hokkaido. It's kind of east-south. In the Hidaka Mountains, there's a Hokkaido Outdoor Adventures is a really good rafting outdoor activity company. So I think that AT, adventure travel, is going to become really popular in East Hokkaido, and that's probably the best engine. You get smaller groups, you get, more people who go on adventure tours. They're going to spend more money. They're also going to require the services of a guide, and they're also going to be sustainably minded. So you're kind of getting away from the bus model tour, which was really popular throughout the decades.
Mm-hmm.
And then now you're getting to like small groups. They want to conserve the environment. They want to learn culture more deeply. And so learning from those places and trying to bring that to places like Kitami and then Kushiro as well. So Kitami's kind of in the center of 3 national parks. You have Daisetsuzan in the west, you have Akanmashu in the east, and then just a little bit up north, you have Shirotoko, as I mentioned before. And one thing that's different about national parks in Japan compared to where I come from, which is America, is that there's actual human society and life and buildings inside national parks. In America, it's separate. You can't build inside of a national park. It's completely protected. For now. So let's hope it keeps that way. If not, we ride at dawn. And in Japan, it's kind of balanced out to where you can't impact the scenery, but you can have your house here. You can, do your tours here and whatnot. And Kushiro is next to a place called the Kushiro Shitsugen, which is the largest marshland in Japan, which, marshes aren't as sexy as Kinkakuji or Shibuya, but what it does show is that there's this huge dependence on nature and clean water, and there's this really big effort of trying to preserve that. And, that kind of spreads out into the communities where it's we like this nature, we like this way of life, and we want to live for that. And so creating adventure tourism activities that really supplement those conservation efforts, but then, bring new ways of getting money into the towns that they can kind of have some fresh life. That's popular with what's called the U-turn crowd, which is people who left the rural areas, went to Tokyo or Osaka, and then they're like, nah, this is not for me. And then they're coming back, but they're coming back with co-working spaces. They're coming back with, fresh ideas. So there's this one organization I'm really inspired by, which is called Doto. And Doto is kind of a nickname that we give to East Hokkaido, which is East Hokkaido. And Doto kind of does PR, media, design, does job advertisements for Japanese people looking to come back to the area. But then it really unites a lot of local business leaders. So it has this kind of multi-hat approach to solving problems that I was oh, okay, cool. I'm going to try to, be inspired by that in some ways and not look at it. This is the one solution to things, which I think we often get locked into.
One of the big questions that comes up in the conversation about moving back to the countryside is the financial aspect of it. Salaries in the big cities are much higher, especially if you want to sustain a family and whatnot. And then moving back to the countryside, you're often faced with relatively low wages. What is being done to kind of talk about this, to change this, but also how low are the wages really when you compare to the cost of living in the countryside?
That's a great question. Yeah, definitely Tokyo salaries, Tokyo cost of living, those, kind of, you don't have any money at the end of the month. Of course, you get to a more successful job, then you'll do well, but just kind of at the start of things. I wouldn't say it's not a huge impact. Yeah, you get paid less, but your rent's 4 mon, 40,000 yen a month for a decent apartment, and you're paying 60,000 yen for a house. You have more space, you have different expenses. So one of the big things is heating.
Yeah, I can imagine the cost.
Hokkaido's pretty cold if you haven't heard, but they're trying to subsidize that to an extent. Some people are kind of going back to wood stoves. I've seen it's pretty popular. They smell great. I would really like one in my house. I have gas right now. But yeah, it just depends on where you live. So Kushiro, I'll look at Kushiro for example. That town got really big during the bubble economy. and it had some of the highest rent prices in all of Japan. It had some of the most coveted real estate in all of Japan
Really?
at that time, because the economy was booming. It went from like a small farming town of like, a couple tens of thousands of people, and then in a decade shot up to like 160, and then almost hit 200,000, and then now it's back down to like 120, 130, and it's going down because the bubble economy collapsed, all of the real estate investments collapsed. So you have all these really big buildings, and they're all old, they're all abandoned, and the problem is now, how do we get rid of them? Well, it costs money. The owners of the owners of the buildings don't want to pay that money. And so there's kind of this back and forth battle about, all right, well, this space isn't being used. And so what that does is drives up some of the rent prices. So some of the rents for the newer places in Kushiro are a little bit higher than what you'd expect for market. But a lot of the, cheaper, older places, you can get an apartment in Kushiro or East Hokkaido. You can get one for, 30,000 yen. It's 2 bedrooms. It's old, but 30,000 yen is 30,000 yen. So
yeah, it's probably less than half of what you'd need to pay here in downtown Osaka.
So yeah, subsidies are one solution. In terms of like family planning and increasing like, the number of births, that's a big problem in Japan. They subsidize a lot of like fertility treatments in the countryside. And that's starting to become a national trend as well. Yeah, it's kind of central government subsidies making it affordable. One program that stands out is called the Furusato Noze. Have you heard of that one?
Yes, I have.
Okay. How would you explain that to your listeners?
Basically, I don't know. You get a tax deduction by donating your tax to another prefecture in exchange for local produce.
Correct. Yep. Very good. So that is really popular now in all of these rural places. And so you have towns with like 10,000 people that have a huge war chest of money from these Furusato Noze programs.
So I could give my taxes to Kitami to get some of those onions.
You could. What Kitami is also starting to do right now is that they're trying to make it to where that Furusato Noze program, which is for Japanese residents, they're trying to create a program where inbound tourists can also do that and then get discounts for goods and services inside of our city. So you pay a certain amount of money, then you're going to get, 10% off this product. And it's still in its, we're still planning it out. So working on this, but it's a program that's been used by Kyoto. It's also a program that's been used by Kuchan, which is the town next to Niseko. And then that money is then used to support local businesses or services. So for Kuchan, for example, and for Kyoto is you donate like, let's say 10,000 yen, and then you get like 3,000 yen back in like a goods or service. But then that 7,000 yen is then used to help preserve different historical sites that don't have as much travel or time and funds that they need to, keep up to speed. And so, people can look at that and think like, oh, it's tipping coming to Japan. It's not that. It's a little bit more intentional. But yeah, you get something back from it. You're giving to a place that doesn't see a lot of traffic. Kitami is one of those places. The Oholtsu region as a whole doesn't get as much travel as say Sapporo or Otaru.
Yeah, I guess for now the big destinations in Hokkaido are Sapporo, the ice festival, snow festival, and Niseko for skiing. And it kind of ends there, more or less.
Correct, yeah. So people's, the second you get east of Sapporo, you get to Furano, and then you hit the mountains, and then people's understanding of what Hokkaido is just kind of ends. They're like, yeah,
country
there's stuff over there, and there's definitely land. You don't just go straight into the sea, but what's in between that is really unknown. So one thing that is quite popular in our town, Kitami, is the Genkan Yakiniku Matsuri. Genkan is not the entrance to your house. It means really, really cold. So we have an outdoor barbecue festival in the middle of winter. Everyone sits around the fire and cooks up yakiniku, and it's like minus 20 outside. And that's just one thing that we're doing to kind of express our culture and our identity as a rural place in Japan. We're cold. We like meat. It's cool. We're going to go outside and we're going to enjoy both of them. And that coincides with like the local ice festival and whatnot. And, those programs weren't designed with tourists in mind. So getting tickets can be a little bit difficult, but it is a really cool, honest, and fun expression of what that place is about. And it's that wacky, weird side of rural Japan that you just don't see. So yeah, please come next February.
You've been writing about your life in Eastern Hokkaido and what people can do there for publications like the Japan Times and Wayapon and more. Taking photography, shared that online, guiding people. And you mentioned you want to try to get people to experience curling.
Yes.
In your remaining time on this program, what are some of the other things you'd like to achieve or build, and maybe beyond that, to make this a successful program?
Well, if I spill all my secrets, then people are gonna copy my stuff. But I'm not that smart, so maybe it's okay. I think with the remaining time that I have, that first year on the program was really about understanding the region. So what are the problems the tourism industry is facing? What does the local community look like? Where is that going? And then the second year, what I'm in now, is trying to create these programs. And then the third year is trying to make sure that these programs stay around after I'm done. Or can these programs sustain me after I'm done? So whether or not I can meet kind of the minimum income to start my own visa or sponsor myself or fold into partnership with another company, that's really important. We need to think about, as foreign residents, what we do here in Japan has an impact. And if we can create things that have these long lasting ripples that go out into the greater blue ocean that is Japan, then that's really important, and that should be forefront for everyone. So I'll point to one thing that I've had success with. My university is Austin Peay State University in Clarksville, Tennessee. And that is not a famous university. It's not a big university, but it's a good university. And the people there are honest. It's very much like rural Japan, where it's just everyone knows everybody, and you can meet a lot of new people and experience new things. And I'm super grateful for being able to have attended there. What we were able to do was that my last year on the JET program, Austin Peay State University partnered with a local high school in Kushiro. One of the biggest things about Japan is that when you compare it to other countries, one, the English ability is not very high. Two, the amount of students they're sending abroad is not as high as other East Asian countries. So what we're able to create is this program for high school students from a particular high school in Kushiro to be able to attend Austin Peay State University in Tennessee at in-state tuition.
Oh, cool.
So as long as their grades matched up and they're, it skips a lot of the tests. So whether or not they have the English ability, that's kind of a big red flag for everyone. Of course, you should be able to, do your studies and whatnot. What we're also able to provide them is the support services to learn English and then, get accustomed to living in America. And it's part of this bigger program that Austin Peay started, where it's moving the amount of students who study abroad. They're all centered in the big cities. They're all going to the biggest universities, but it's giving an opportunity to that rural side of Japan that, kids just have to be able to dream. And they get into high school, and depending on what high school they got into, because of a test in middle school, depends on what college they'll get into if they do that. And that kind of decides what the rest of their life looks like. So maybe in America, if you get into a good college, you can reinvent yourself and you can go and do these grand things. In Japan, that pressure is put on your, last year of middle school, when you're the equivalent of a freshman in the United States. And how about in Germany?
I think pretty much the same. We, in our last year of high school, we have to decide and apply for different universities, and depending on your grades, you get in or you don't. And you're asked to make a big decision without that much knowledge about what it entails down the road. And I think I'm pretty far away from the different things I studied, or maybe not that much, but my brother certainly is.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult decision as a teenager, I think.
Yeah, one of the things about America, at least, which I think is good, and there's many things about America that are very difficult, is that it is a country of like second, third chances, where you can kind of just try something, fail, and then try something else. And then if that doesn't work out, you have the opportunity
it's kind of part of the American mindset, right? You need to have tried and failed and tried and failed, and then people may recognize you. Oh, this guy is kind of hanging in there. He might lead to something. And I actually read an article not so long ago in Japan that it's kind of the opposite, that you shouldn't show those failures. So you have to always more or less succeed, and if you fail, you kind of fall off the boat.
So for these Japanese students in Kushiro, they can now get outside of the hierarchy of Japan and say, I went to an international university. I now have 2 languages. And we don't want them to come to Tennessee to then stay there forever. We want them to learn, to practice and get better, and then come back to places like Kushiro and then breathe that back into the local economy and community. And yeah, I'm really happy that we were able to get that started. Much credit goes to my counselor, who also helped me get onto the JET program. And you should look to try to build more bridges than giving up on them when they seem too difficult.
You said that when you were talking with your counselor, you had an inkling of what you want to do in the future, but we're not so sure. Now you've been in Hokkaido for nearly 7 years?
Yeah, getting close to 7 years.
6,
too long.
Have you found, is this what you want to do? Continue to bring energy back to Japan's countryside?
Yeah, I want to take pictures and I want to write articles. And I really want to live before I die. And if I can keep doing that, then that's what's most important to me. If that's as a journalist or as a travel writer or a tourism consultant, these are all really good things. The coronavirus pandemic, that, sucked and it was lonely and I'm out there in the middle of nowhere, but I really got to learn to be dependent on myself. But that dependence on self really stemmed from having such a good supporting cast of people who really cared for me and really encouraged me to try new things and say, hey, you would be really good at doing this. You'd be a good journalist. You should try that. And I want to continue to do that. Some people ask me, they're like, Justin, do you want to live in Japan forever? And I was like, well, it's not so much that I want to live in Japan. If I could live in Hokkaido forever, not a single second thought on that.
Yeah.
I would love that. But there's different things that I want to see in the world, different people I want to meet. I want to eat at restaurants that are dirty and have cool conversations with interesting people who are regular and boring and see that truth. I went to Korea recently for the pro impeachment, anti-president demonstrations, and I was able to meet a lot of different reporters out there, but then hear from a lot of different people about this is what this situation means to me, whether they're in support of the president or not. And so having those conversations and then being able to be a fly on the wall to history was really cool. Not that I got really anything professionally out of it. It was just fun practice. That's what I want to experience. And when I'm out in the countryside, I think that there's this stereotype about Japan being really cold, and Hokkaido definitely is, but the people as well, and really distant and unloving and kind, but quiet. And I haven't found that to be the case, at least in my life. I think that being able to speak Japanese makes a lot of that go away. But then kind of paying attention to what, different values are and what different people want. There's definitely a big broad brush approach to Japanese people think this way, or Japanese people do this, Japanese people don't do this. That's such a cynical way to look at people. They are human first. The quiet salaryman in your office place is not wondering about, some really aesthetic Nihonpoi thing that exists. He's not wondering about whether or not, he's reading the room right or whatnot. He's thinking about, did his baseball team win? What's he going to have for dinner? Is he going to be able to pay rent that month? And I think that when you start to approach people as people first and get to know who they are, that's really important. And we tend to exotify and romanticize what Japanese culture is and put it up on this weird pedestal. And it's an easy country to live in. It's a great country to live in. I enjoy it. It's not for everyone, but there's some dark side to it. And that's something that, you know, Japan is going to have to tackle and look at and think about, you know, how is it going to change in kind of an international world. But we can't over-romanticize certain things about Japan. You know, the whole phrase like kuki o yomu, read the room. It's like, yeah, they have that here, but we have that back in America. We should be able to read the room, and you know, you have that as well in Germany, in your home country, and you know, but we kind of, oh, in Japan it's this, you have to do this. It's like, yeah, you know, that's important. It is, but it's not everything, and it maybe isn't as important as what we make it to be. People are important, and we should talk to them. We should get to know them, what they want. You should never meet the same person twice for the first time. So remember people's names, their faces, what they like. These are really critical things, especially when you're a journalist or a writer or working in regional revitalization. It's like, oh, this person operates this way, and I understand that, and I can have a good conversation with them.
So for people interested in breaking this barrier and going beyond those stereotypes and meeting the people of rural Hokkaido in Kitami, they can reach out to you.
Yeah.
We'll make sure to have all your links in the description. So for people that are interested, they can contact you directly, maybe ask more questions, or maybe visit and try the yakiniku for themselves.
Please, by all means.
Justin, do you think we covered it? Do you think we got a good picture of what you wanted to share with us today about Hokkaido and rural Japan? Or is there maybe one more important thing that we haven't gotten to touch upon?
So one thing I would like to add, a couple years ago, my grandfather, he passed away. And one of the things that people memorialized him was that there was never someone who was a stranger. It was just a friend they haven't met yet. So when you come live in Japan, be that person who greets everybody, say good morning, say good night, say good job, thank you for your hard work. Be that kind of person who goes out there and people will reflect that. If you treat people like friends, you'll make them. And so I think that's important. If you work here, try to live by that.
I think that's a great way to finish this conversation.
Yep.
Thank you, Justin, for coming all the way from Hokkaido.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. This was Unpacking Japan, and we'll be back again next week. Bye. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on future conversations. And we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed this episode, here are a couple more that we think you'll enjoy. Thanks again for your support, and we'll see you next time.